Okay, let's go on to the internet here. Oh, look, there's this guy named Ralph. It looks like Donkey Kong. Oh, I just lost my internet connection. The Ralph guy broke my internet connection. Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, directed by Phil Johnson and Peter Ramsey, starring John C. Reilly, Sarah Silverman, Jane Lynch, Jack McBrayer, Alan Tudyk, Alfred Molina, Ed O'Neill. This movie is a sequel to Wreck-It Ralph 1. In this movie, Ralph breaks Penelope's game Sugar Rush. He creates a new track in Sugar Rush because Penelope has been getting bored with her game. When Penelope decides to drive down this new racetrack that Ralph has created, the child controlling the game breaks the steering wheel. The owner can't replace it because of how old the video game is. The only replacement piece of the steering wheel is available on eBay, but it's too expensive to buy. Ralph and Penelope decide to go into the internet to get the steering wheel themselves, and that's pretty much our movie. Now, I wanted to see this because I like the first Wreck-It Ralph and I've always wanted to see what a sequel could do. I thought this sequel was very good. John C. Reilly and Sarah Silverman are great once again as Ralph and Penelope. They really do work well off each other and have great chemistry. Jack McBrayer is great as Felix, and Jane Lynch is great as Calhoun. But we don't get enough of them in the movie. They don't get as much screen time as they did in the first movie. The majority of the movie is more focused on Ralph and Penelope going into the internet to get the steering wheel. The subplot about Felix and Calhoun adopting all the other racing children from Sugar Rush is pretty much pushed off to the background, to the whole point that it's barely in the movie, really. The other new characters that we meet in this movie, like Alan Tudyk as Knowsmore, who is kind of like a Google-like character. He's pretty good in the movie, and Gal Gadot voices Shank, who is a racer in this racing game called Slaughter Race. Is very good in the movie. You have Tasha P. Henson in the film, voicing a character named Yes, who is the algorithm for this website called BuzzTube, which is this movie's version of YouTube that Ralph goes on in order to raise money for the steering wheel. The movie was done very well. Yes, this movie is pretty much just another version of the Emoji Movie, but it's actually a pretty good version of the Emoji Movie. Yeah, this movie has a lot of product placement for different websites like Twitter, eBay, and IMDb, and some other websites that are out there, but it's still a really good movie, and Ralph and Penelope are great in it, as well as a lot of these other new characters that show up in the movie. But let's get into the negatives, and the main negative is the fact that Fix-It Felix and Jane Lynch's character Calhoun are barely in this film. They were great characters in the first movie, so to cut down their screen time in this film in order to put more focus on Ralph and Penelope was a bit of a shame. I really wanted to see a little bit more of them. And some of this movie did feel like a little bit of a rehash of the first film, but this is a very good sequel, and I definitely think people should check this movie out. So I'm going to give this movie a B+. Definitely check out Wreck-It Ralph, Ralph Breaks the Internet. And of course there are a couple of after credits scenes, so stay after the credits. And that's all I got to say for Ralph Breaks the Internet. I think we can all agree Emily Blunt is no Julie Andrews, but is she a worthy successor to the name of Mary Poppins? The answer to that question is a yes. Mary Poppins Returns, directed by Rob Marshall, starring Emily Blunt as our title character, Mary Poppins. You got Lin-Manuel Miranda as Jack, Bert's son or nephew. Ben Whishaw plays Michael Banks, all grown up. Emily Mortimer plays Jane Banks, all grown up. And then you have the three children of Michael Banks, John, Annabelle, and Georgie. Meryl Streep shows up in the movie as Topsy-Turvy, Mary Poppins' cousin. Julie Walters shows up in the film. Dick Van Dyke makes a cameo, and another legendary actress makes a cameo who I don't want to spoil. So let's talk about this movie. Now, the original Mary Poppins is a classic. I love the movie that stars Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke. It is an amazing film, definitely an A+, even though now that I think about it, there are probably one or two flaws, maybe. The main flaw being that the umbrella only talks once in the whole movie. But aside from that, it is an amazing film and definitely one of my favorite Disney films of all time. And the songs are etched into my brain. Feed the Birds, Fly Kite, I Love to Laugh, Chim Chimney, Step in Time. Those are my favorite songs from the movie. And there are other songs like Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious as well, and then there's Holiday with Mary and a Holiday with Bert. That song is a pretty good song too. And I was hoping that this movie was not going to be as good as the classics, because let's just face it, if your bar is that high, that is way too high. But is this a worthy sequel? Is Emily Blunt a worthy successor to Julie Andrews? And I have to say yes. And yes, this movie is a worthy sequel. I think Emily Blunt does a great job as Mary Poppins. I think overall the movie is a pretty good sequel. The two actors that play the Banks kids all grown up, Ben Whishaw and Emily Mortimer, they're great in the movie. The three child actors that play John, Annabelle, and Georgie, they're great in the movie. And the whole plot of this film being that Michael Banks is a widower and his house is about to be repossessed because he took out a loan with the bank, and since he's a bank teller, he's not earning enough money to pay off the loan, so he's behind on his payments, and the bank could repossess his home, and he's got to find a way to come up with the money before it's too late. And of course, Mary Poppins comes in to help save the day, and that's pretty much our movie. One of the biggest problems, though, with this movie is that you have a character that's helping you out that is pure magical. So that's one of the big problems with this movie. I mean, even though Emily Blunt does a great job playing Mary Poppins, and I did like Jack doing the Bert role, even though he's not chimney sweep, he's a street light lighter, and everything else about the movie was good. The problem with this film is, first off, much of this movie feels like a rehash of the original classic. There are scenes that basically just feel like rehash of scenes from the original movie. You got a scene that goes into the bathtub, but through the whole time you're thinking of the bathtub, if you're someone that watched the original movie, you're thinking of spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, and snap, it's a game, and in order to clean up the nursery. The scene where you go into the 2D animation I thought was very good, but does it compare to the 2D animation scene in the original movie? No, the 2D animation scene in the original movie is much better, but this scene was pretty good for what it does, really. I thought that the 2D animation scene was pretty good. The Leary song, where you have the street lighters, the street lamp lighters, lighting the street lamps and singing their song, that's basically a rehash of Chim Chimney and Step in Time, basically, unfortunately. That's one of the problems with this movie, is a lot of times, a lot of these songs are basically just rehash of the original songs, really, but just different words. Then we have something that the original movie didn't have, which is a villain. What? Poppins doesn't need a villain! Colin Firth plays the villain in this movie, an evil banker. Ooh, an evil banker. Yeah, we really needed an evil banker. No, we didn't need an evil banker who has his evil lawyer henchmen with him who are bent set on trying to reclaim the bank's house. And how this whole thing gets resolved is basically just a plot convenience. I don't want to say how it gets resolved, but it's so stupid. Two plot conveniences, actually. There's a plot convenience solved by Cameo, and then there's another plot convenience solved by Mary Poppins. And I'm wondering, why didn't she do this before? She could have done this whole plot convenience during the climax of the movie much quicker, but she decided to wait, and then she says, oh, all right, I'll help you out, and then she does her magical thing to help him out. I was like, why didn't you do that before? You could have done that a long time ago. If you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But overall, I thought this was a pretty good sequel. And Emily Blunt does a pretty good job filling in the very big shoes of Julie Andrews. And Jack does a pretty good job filling in the shoes of Dick Van Dyke, considering his experience with Hamilton. And then you have Ben Whishaw doing a great job as Michael Banks, and Emily Mortimer playing Jane Banks. I did like the fact that Jane is a labor activist, so she's taking up the same progressive politics that her mother did. Her mother was the women's movement at the time, so she's going on the same road, being a labor activist. That was pretty cool. But there's this implied romance between Jane and Jack. The problem is, just like Aquaman and Mira, no chemistry! If you're gonna have a romance, you gotta have some chemistry, and there's no chemistry between them. There's a little bit of implied romance between them, and maybe some seeds for chemistry, maybe, but really there's not much chemistry between them because Jack is spending most of his time with Mary Poppins, really. But of course Mary Poppins doesn't really need a love interest since she's an immortal character. So obviously Mary Poppins is trying to set Jack up with Jane, but the problem is I don't really feel any chemistry between them because there's not enough scenes between the two of them to really feel any chemistry. One of the things I definitely did like that the previous movie didn't do a good job of is the fact that Mary Poppins' umbrella talks. In the original movie, the umbrella only talked once, and that was at the end of the film. But in this movie, it talks a bit more often, which was great because that was one of the things that kind of bugged me about the original classic, is that supposedly the umbrella talks. Now, even though I never read the books, for that to only happen once in the original classic is kind of weird, but at the same time, I still love the movie. I would still give the original classic an A+. Overall, I do think this is a pretty good movie. A couple of the songs do stick out. I did like the balloon song at the end. I did like the street lamp song, the Leary song, even though the balloon song is basically just a rehash of Let's All Fly a Kite. But in the end, I'm going to give this movie a B. It's worth seeing in the theater as a matinee, and that's all I gotta say for Mary Poppins Returns. The question is, does Beale Street shine better than moonlight? If Beale Street Could Talk, directed by Barry Jenkins, the man that directed the Best Picture winner Moonlight. This is his follow-up movie starring Kiki Lane, Stephen James, Regina King, Coleman Domingo, Diego Luna, Dave Franco, Brian Tyree Henry, Tijuana Paris. This movie is the new movie from Barry Jenkins. This is about a couple that have known each other since they were kids, played by Kiki Layne and Stephen James, Tish Rivers, and Fonnie Hunt, also known as Alonzo Fonnie Hunt, but he prefers to be called Fonnie. They want to get married and they are having a baby together, but some problems come along the way. Fonnie gets arrested for a rape that he didn't commit, and so the family are trying their best to prove his innocence, while they're also trying to figure out what to do about the upcoming baby that's going to be born soon. Two families are trying to get along. They are having trouble getting along because Tish's family is very high class, and the two families are having trouble getting along because Fonnie's family is very high class while Kiki's family is more low class. So Fonnie's family, when they see Kiki's family, they're very stuck up to Kiki, and that's pretty much our movie. Now, when I heard about this movie, I really wanted to see it. I've been waiting to see this movie. The problem is it's been on limited release for quite some time, and finally now it's got a wider release. I have to say I really like this movie. This movie is not as good as Moonlight, but it is still a great movie, and I can definitely see some Oscar nominations coming from this film for both Kiki Layne, Stephen James, and probably another Best Director nomination for Barry Jenkins as well. I think cinematography could be an award for this film, and some other nominees and some other awards. So let's talk about this movie. This is a really good film, and Barry Jenkins does another amazing job with this movie. The direction in this movie is really good. Kiki Layne and Stephen James do an amazing job with their performances. Both of them are great. They have terrific chemistry. You can really tell that they do love each other, and through the whole movie I was rooting for both of them and hoping that Stephen James was going to be proven innocent throughout this movie. I did like Regina King, who plays Tish's mom in the movie. Coleman Domingo plays her father in the film. Both of them were great in the movie. I also liked the actors that played Stephen James's family, Fonnie's parents. They were very good, and it was interesting to see that his family has a different point of view of things versus Kiki's family, who are more simple. And I think that's one of the reasons why Fonnie loves Tish, is because he likes things that are more simple. Everything versus what he has. He prefers a simple life, and we find simple things to be more beautiful, I guess. Diego Luna is really good in the movie too. Pedro Pascal is great in the film. Brian Tyree Henry is really good. Dave Franco is in the movie. He doesn't get that much to do, but what he does get to do, he does a pretty good job in the film. All the actors in this movie are really good. The performances are great. The cinematography is good. The production design is great. Costume design is pretty good. The locations is done very well. This movie really does a good job of making the New York area that it's showing speak. Let's get into the negatives of this movie, because this movie is far from perfect, which is one of the reasons why Moonlight is a better film. But let's talk about the negatives of this film. One of the main negatives that I found with this movie is that this movie is done in a non-linear style. The second scene in the movie, we find out that Stephen James is being arrested, but they don't tell you what the crime is at that point. You find out later on in the movie what the crime is. That part of the movie is done in flashbacks, which is one of the main problems. This movie has a lot of flashbacks, and that made me very confused. I was confused between what was flashback and what was present day. I hate it when I am confused between flashback and present day. I really wish when a movie has a lot of flashbacks, it would do something to give you an idea of what is the flashback versus what is present day. Like maybe have the flashbacks be shot differently with like a different tone of light or something versus the present day, because that would make things much easier for me and for other audience members. But this is still a great movie. The best way I could tell which is the flashback, which was not, is the present day were the shots where Fonnie was in jail talking to Kiki on the other side, Tish on the other side, I should say. And the flashbacks were all the scenes where Fonnie was not in jail and trying to tell the story of the events that got him into that place and how they met. Another problem with this movie is the pacing. The movie does move at a bit of a slow pace, and you do tend to feel the length of the film. But overall, I really like this movie. I can definitely see that this film could get some Oscar nominations. I hope it does get some Oscar nominations because the performances are excellent, direction is great, cinematography is good, production design is really good. I really hope this movie does very well at the Oscars. So I'm going to give this movie an A-. Definitely check out If Beale Street Could Talk, and we'll definitely put this movie on my best list for 2018. And that's all I got to say for If Beale Street Could Talk.